We start with Reinhard Kaiser. Reinhard is the Deputy Director General, Ecological Resource Efficiency and Soil Conservation of the German Federal Ministry for the Environment. He has been working there for over 15 years, and you will find his extended CV in your program, of course, so I will just limit myself and ask you, sir, come to the floor.
I come from the other side of the world, and I would like to tell a little bit about the efforts we do there in Europe and in Germany to foster resource efficiency and to open the pathways to change. Why are we working on it? This graph shows it. The resource use we practice in our civilization, in our way to manage economy, leads to these curves. And mathematician as I am, I immediately say these are exponential curves. We know about this exponential growth since 1972, since the Club of Rome study. And Alex Vonast yesterday showed you the graph continuing to 2050. Well, continuing that to 2050 would have consequences of ecological and social character, which would be relatively dramatic. But even if we intervene successfully in these processes, just suppose we would achieve to halve the resource use in the industrialized countries to the state of, say, 2010, to halve it, which is quite ambitious, actually. And in addition, we would achieve that the growing countries, the developing countries, would not use more than this half we achieve by our efforts. Not live like we live today, but use only half of the resources per capita. That would mean that in 2050, we would still increase our resource use by 40% compared with 2010. And if you calculate what that means in climate gas emissions, these 40% more resource use, then you find it's not compatible with the 2-degree target of our climate colleagues. So this challenge is a quite dramatical ecological and social one. And we in Europe try to work on this since some years. You see, this list begins in 2005 with a thematic strategy, with a communication of the European Commission. And the list goes on until 2014 with a new communication of the Commission and with 2 reports of the European Parliament. So the European level really tries to tackle this. And in the last period of Commission, with the Environmental Commissioner Potočnik, it was one of his main items to foster resource efficiency. Number 2. The actual state in the European situation is we have a new Commission since last December, which is still working on finding their way to arrange with one another. But they told us that they will, last line, bring a new and even more ambitious package of proposals as to resource efficiency, as to circular economy as a whole, by the end of the year. You see, last line, presentation of the new package by end of 2015. And what does it mean more ambitious than last time? The last proposal was very much concentrated in the legal aspects on the waste management. This time, they say they want to approach it in the whole line, beginning with the extraction of raw materials, over production and consumption, social aspects of that, and of course, new proposals for waste management. Now, that's the European thing. For Germany, why am I here? Why am I working on that with the whole subdivision working on it? Because, well, there are several drivers, but one very important driver for us is the dependence on raw materials. You see, 97 of our entrepreneurs see a problem there. Some believe that raw materials may be scarce, that may be costly, but all of them see high volatility in the prices. So it's a continuous topic for our country, managing this. Well, there are several ways to approach that. One is to try to secure just access to raw materials, do treaties with other countries, bilateral partnerships, and so on. We try that, but the possibilities there are limited. The more intelligent approach is just to increase the independence, to be flexible. We will always need raw materials. Yeah? We will always buy raw materials in Australia for decades to come, but we can try to limit the amount and to be flexible in what we need. So already in 2002, we passed our national sustainability strategy. And in this sustainability strategy, we got a quantitative target for resource efficiency. The target to double raw material productivity by 2020 compared with 1994. And this quantitative target, this sustainability strategy as such has been confirmed by every coalition, every government since. There's a broad consensus in German politics that we're going to follow that. And not only until 2020, also for the time after. So where do we stand with raw material productivity? You see this graph. The red line is the raw material productivity in top, and you see it's increasing. We're getting better and better. But it's not increasing enough. If you just continue that, we'll end by something like 165%. So we get 2/3 of our target. Not the target of 200, but 2/3 of it. That's not enough. And the other thing you note, if you look at it a little bit closely, in the last years, the raw material productivity almost does not increase anymore. Well, noting that, we came to the point that we have to do something. And what we are doing is drafting a resource efficiency program. We passed our national resource efficiency program, not a strategy, but a program, very practically oriented, in 2012. So the consequences of the implementation of the program, you can't see them in this chart, because the earliest figures are just from the time immediately after. So we hope the consequences will show in the next year's statistics. February 2012, our government passed this program. And we got an obligation to report about the implementation of the program and to further develop it every 4 years by the government and also by a national parliament. So that's what we are working on in the moment, Progress 2, to be finalized by 2016. So our resource efficiency program could not tackle all questions at the same time. A little bit different approach from the European Commission. They try to cover all resources. We said, begin with this relatively narrow thing, stabilize that, develop that, and then look further. So we concentrated on the 4 fields you see in green in the base, and we had a lot to do with that. In Progress 2, we hope to include fossil fuels and biotic fuels in addition. And in Progress 3, 4 years later, we'll see what we do about food and feed, about land and soil perhaps about water. We'll just discuss that with our colleagues who work in these fields, whether it's a good idea to include that in the program or whether we just describe the nexus between the various resources and leave the political processes a little bit separate. We see that as a very pragmatic question. Our program works along the entire value chain, you see, from raw materials, supply, over production and consumption, to the closed cycle management, waste management as the 4th block. And then we look at, of course, overarching instruments. If you count it down, we made a long list of specific items. Some 160, 170 singular items are tackled there. Because the characteristic thing about resource efficiency in our perception is there is no simple solution. There are not 2, 3, 4 instruments, one port up, and then it works. It's a enormous field of specific aspects with specific actors in every of the respects. And you must try to overarch it all, create something like a common understanding, and above all, individual initiative by the other actors, not by us, by the other actors in their fields. One important aspect for the scientists in this room, we have quite a lot of research efforts. I won't go into this chart very much. You see the very small figures in the border, the black ones. Each of them is a call for proposals. Each of them very well considered which proposals are to call for, building step by step quite a chain of programs in our research sector. This is not done by my ministry. That's a mistake of PowerPoint. Yeah? There should be the heading of the Ministry of Research on that. Also, if the presentation gets available to you, you'll find an annex with other charts where you find more details about these programs. All these research things, Ministry of the Research. I could not change that before. I only noted this mistake yesterday evening. So, winning other participants. We cannot make an ordinance, Germany is resource efficient, full stop. Impossible. We must win scientists, industry, social organizations of every kind, trade unions, many individual actors, consumers, to share our concern, to take up our ideas and our perspectives, and to realize in their own responsibility and in their own initiative. So we have created quite a lot of structures, bringing people together, organizing exchange. This list is by far not complete. Perhaps one highlight are these big conferences. Our Federal Environment Agency organizes every 2 years, 12, 14, 16, well arranged with the World Resources Forum, which who hold their worldwide meetings in Davos in the years in between. On the international level, you see, I talked quite a lot about Europe and quite a lot about Germany. Oh, yeah. On the international level, we find relatively little structures working on resource efficiency in our perception. There is the one thing since 2007, the International Resource Panel hosted by UNEP. And we supported that as Germany from the beginning. And happy enough, meeting in Davos this October at the same time as the World Resources Forum. What a coincidence. At last we find these two things in one place together. But it's the only formal state-organized, state-oriented structure we find on the international level. That's a pity. There are people working on that, OECD is working on that, various UN organizations are working on it, but it's not really a process. So we are very proud that we achieved to bring resource efficiency up as a topic of the German G7 presidency this year. And on the G7 summit, we're going to have in a week, resource efficiency will be one of the major items of the German presidency and part of the final declaration of the summit. At least we hope. Everything is prepared. Our part is consensus, so it should pass. What we suggest to the summit from the working level of all the 7 states is this. You see, commitment for national action, an alliance, basically working on small and medium enterprises, production sector, but because that is a thing where we think we are very strong and can offer something. A mandate to the International Resources Panel, the idea bringing things together, structuring, and also a mandate to OECD, who have worked a lot on it and should be somehow part of the process to begin. Quite interesting, the Business 7, the major organizations of industry in the 7 countries, they met on their own summit 2 weeks ago. They usually do every year in the country where the presidency is hosted. And they passed a long resolution this time with recommendations to the summit, supporting our initiative, and even in some aspects going farther than we could in the state G7 level. Quite an interesting development. They begin to engage in the resource efficiency process, and of course we need industry. not only the big organizations, also the sectoral, but in some way that is also a breakthrough in our view. Okay, now follow-up process, briefly, workshop series, a synthesis report from IRP coming in 2016, and hopefully the future G7 presidencies will take that up. Japan cautiously signaled that they are interested, perhaps to do it. Now, what will follow out of the small realm of the G7, only 7 states? We think about the G20. Australia, where's Australia? Ah, here, yeah? We think about the G20. It might be an idea, for instance, in 2017, take up the experience of the G7 process and try to interest the G20 to take it up in their way and in their scope. If anybody can influence his or her national government to make a move in that direction, might be interesting to talk within the G20, we would be very thankful. And there is the question of the SDGs. Janet talked about that yesterday and showed you the SDG situation. We have resource efficiency in 2 SDGs. We in Germany don't know very much actually about the implementation process of the SDGs. We'll have to observe that very, very attentively. And if there is a chance to grip into it and to form kind of an international process structure coordination meeting, bringing it together with the other things I showed you, we should certainly recognize the window of opportunity and pass through it. So the very next step, of course, well, we are in June. The next step in our view is the World Resources Forum in Davos, coinciding with meeting on sustainable consumption and production, as I learned, and with the IRP meeting. So we hope that this configuration will lead to accents, to a message to the international community, helping us to bring and keep resource efficiency on the international agenda. The World Resources Forum, with its traditional meetings every 2 years, I think 4th time now, yeah, might be something really by its continuity. No? Continuity is everything if you want to win people to act actively on their own, might really contribute to bring the international processes forward. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm very curious how these processes will develop in the near future.
Thank you so much, Reinhard, for this wonderful overview of German, European and global resource efficiency